What's going on, everybody? Welcome to today's video. In this video, we're going to be talking about how to get started in DaVinci Resolve. Maybe it's your first time using Resolve, or maybe you're coming from another program. But in this video, I'm going to show you how to create your first project in DaVinci Resolve. So let's jump into the video. The first thing you need to do to get started in DaVinci Resolve is to actually go and download it. If you haven't already, head on over to Blackmagic Design's website and search for DaVinci Resolve 16. Just click on the download link and that'll bring you to the page where you can download the version you want. Now here are the two free versions on this side. You have DaVinci Resolve 16 Beta, which is what I'll be using for this video, and you have DaVinci Resolve 15. The studio versions are paid versions. They cost $300, which in the scheme of things isn't bad. And then you own it and you get all the upgrades. So I've already downloaded it, installed it, and now we're going to jump over into it and get started. The first thing you're going to see when you open DaVinci Resolve is this screen here. And the way Resolve works is it uses databases to hold your information about a project. Here I have two different databases. I have one local database on my MacBook Pro, and then I have an external drive, a Drobo 5DT, that has most of my projects on it, most of my YouTube stuff, any other projects that I'm working on. So if you want to create a new database or you don't have one yet, you're going to click New Database and you're going to come over to Create. You're going to select Disk, add a name in here, and then Location, you're going to select that, and it's going to give you an opportunity to pick where you want your new database to be located. As I mentioned, I have one on my internal hard drive and one on my external hard drive, and you would just click Create. Resolve will then create your database for you, and that's where you're going to get started with your projects. In this case, I'm going to create a new file here on my Drobo. All of my files, my working files, my video clips, my graphics, anything else I'm going to use for this project, I'm going to keep on my internal hard drive, on my desktop, basically. But I do create the project file in my database that is on my external hard drive. The database file basically tells Resolve where everything is and where to find the different parts and pieces of your project. So I'm going to use the Drobo 5DT and I'm going to create a new project inside my folder called YouTube. I'm going to come down and select New Project down here at the bottom, and I'm going to name it whatever I want. I'm going to call mine Getting Started in DaVinci Resolve. I'm going to click Create, and it's going to go ahead and open up Resolve for us. If this is your first time in DaVinci Resolve, I'm going to give you a quick overview on how it's set up, and then we're going to get into some settings we want to select, and we're going to create our first project. The way DaVinci Resolve is set up is into different screens or different tabs. If you look along the bottom of your screen here, you have several different tabs. And it starts with a tab called Media, which is where you import your media, that anything that you want to use for your project. The next tab is a Cut tab, and this is basically for quick editing and throwing together quick videos. This is a new feature that's come out in DaVinci Resolve 16. So the next tab is the Edit tab, and this is similar to any other editor that you may have used. And if you haven't used any, well, this is what it looks like. And it allows you to put together your full edit right here, add in music, video, pictures, photos, anything that you would want to put in your video. This is where it's done. The next tab is the Fusion tab, and this is for all of your really cool graphics and motion graphics and tracking things and putting really cool text that tracks with things. This Fusion tab here is super deep. I'm just trying to get into it myself. There's so much to it. It's got a lot of really cool features that you can use, and it can really do a lot. The next tab is the Color tab, and this is where you do all your color grading. You can apply LUTs. You can work with your image, exposure, colors, all kinds of stuff, shadows, highlights, everything that you could imagine with the look of your video is done right here in the Color tab. In the next tab, you have the Fairlight tab, which is basically a full-on audio editing software. And it's nice that it's built right in. It's got tons of great features, great tools, and I've got a bunch of videos on how you can make your audio better in your videos. And this is where you would do all of your audio work on your files. And the last tab here is the Deliver tab. This tab is dedicated to exporting your video in different types of formats, whether you want to bring it back to Premiere, whether you want to do a Vimeo, a YouTube. It's got some preset options for you up here, as well as you can do anything that you want. One thing to note with the free version, which is what I'm using, I don't think you can export in 4K or some of the higher resolutions, but you can get 1080p, which for me is good enough for YouTube at this point. So this is where you would set everything that you want to set and how you would render out your video files. So I'm going to come back to the Media tab here as we get started to create our first project here in DaVinci Resolve. And one of the important things you want to think about right when you get started is the frame rate of your timeline. You want to set the frame rate before you even bring in any footage so that when you get started editing, it's going to be in the frame rate that you want. Once you've already imported your media and started building your timeline and making your video, you can't go back and change your frame rate. So you want to get that set right in the beginning. There's a couple ways that you can do it. I'm going to show you the easiest way and the way that I use most of the time. So I'm going to start by navigating to my footage that I want to bring into my project. And if you don't see your media storage button checked on up here, just click that and it's going to show you your file paths, and you can go and find your files that you'd like to bring into your project. So I know mine are on my desktop, and I have a folder here and I call it in my footage 5D Mark IV. So all my files for the project are right here. Now I can just drag them all over into the bottom area here, which is going to import them into my project. But as I mentioned before, with the frame rate, we want to get that set right in the beginning. So the easiest way to do it is to find one of your files that's at the frame rate you want to use. For example, I know that I want to use 23.976 as my frame rate for my timeline. And I do have some videos that were framed at 60 frames per second, but I want to use this 29.976. So the easiest way to set that is to just grab one file, bring it down to the area on the bottom here, and Resolve's going to pop up a window that asks you if you want to change your current settings to match this video. And I'm going to click change. Now our timeline is all set. It's in the frame rate that we want. And that's the easiest and quickest way to get your frame rate set. So now I'm going to go through and just add in the rest of my footage that I want to use. I'm going to select them all and just drag them down to the bottom here. I've added all my footage down to the bottom here. And one thing that I can do that will help my videos play smoother and help my editing process be easier and less taxing on my machine is to create optimized media. It basically is like pre-rendering the files for you. So once you get into your timeline, it should be a lot easier and quicker to work with them. And it's super easy to do that. Just select all your files, right click on them, and then click right here, generate optimized media. And you can let that go. It's going to take a minute or two depending on how many files and how big they are. But then once it's rendered, you should be good to go, and it'll be quicker when you start editing your video. All right, all my optimized media has been rendered. The next thing I want to do is just make a few changes to some settings that will also help improve the playback once I get to the edit timeline. So I'm going to come back to the playback menu up here and make sure that this is checked, used optimized media if available. I'm going to make sure that that's checked. I want to come down to render cache, come down here, and I want to pick smart. So what that'll do is render things in the background while you're not doing super intensive things on your machine. The next thing I want to select is, again, under playback and proxy mode. And over here you can select half resolution or quarter resolution, and that just is the resolution that the video will play back in your screen while you're editing. So I'm going to select half resolution, and usually that's fine. I never have a problem with it. And you can always go back and turn this off so you see the higher resolution video files if you need to. One thing to keep in mind is when you render everything out, when we're done, it's going to use the full res files, so you're not going to have any loss of quality or anything like that. This just helps speed up your editing in the edit tab once we get going putting our video together. The last thing that I want to do here in the media tab is look for any clips that I want to play back in slow motion. So I have two clips here that I filmed at 60 frames per second, and if I look over here on the right, FPS frames per second, most are 23.976, but I have two that are at 59.940 or 60 frames per second. So if I added those into the timeline and I just played them, they're going to come back and look like they're playing really fast or a little jittery. But what I'd like to do is have them play in slow motion. In order to get your clips to play in slow motion, right click on your clip, come up to clip attributes, and right at the top here we have video frame rate. So I want to change that to 23.976 or whatever your timeline is. Maybe you set your timeline at something different. You want to change it to whatever your timeline is. Then when you bring it in your timeline, it's going to play back in slow motion. Now that we have our media imported, we're going to jump over to the edit tab and start editing. So here's the edit tab. I'm still using this. Haven't really tried out the cut tab too much yet, but this is the edit tab, and this is where we're going to get started creating our video. So the first thing we need to do is see our media pool, where we put all our data that's associated with our project. So I'm going to come up to the top left here. We have media pool. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to scroll to my videos here. So I've got all my clips over here. Now we have the ability to preview our clips and select our in points and out points, which means, which sections of the video do you want to bring in? Maybe you don't want the whole thing. So in order to get two screens where we can see our video clips here, as well as what we have down in our timeline, you want to come over to the top right-hand side here, and you have these two little window-looking things. You click on that, and now it's going to give me two screens. So if I come over here and I double-click on one of my files, it's going to show me this source file. in the window here. On the right-hand window, it's going to show me whatever's in my timeline. Now, I currently don't have anything in my timeline, which is why we don't see anything over here. But once I do put things in my timeline, you'll see that over here. To look at my videos and pick what I want to import, I'm going to just click on my video. And when you hit the space bar, that's going to allow your video to play in the window here. So I know, let's say I want to start here. I want to grab it here. So you have different tools down along the bottom here. These little guys with these little arrows with the line, that's the mark in point where I want the video to come in. And then the other one is the mark out point. So where do I want the video to stop? So let's say I want to stop right there. I'm going to hit mark out. Now I want to add this to my timeline. So how do I do that? One way is to just click on the video and drag it down in your timeline. And you'll see it'll add a video track and it'll add an audio track. That's if you want to use both your video and your audio. In this case, I don't care about the audio that's associated with the video. I just want to grab the video. So if I hover over the video clip here, you see you get these two icons on the bottom here. This is grab the video only. This one means grab the audio only. So I only want to grab the video. So I'm going to click on this and drag it down to my timeline. And you see it just brought down the video clip. So now when I hit spacebar and I'm clicking my timeline, you can see it plays over here. So this is what's in my timeline right now. And that's how you would go through and add each one of your clips to your video timeline. Let's say I double click on the next clip, and here we've got the ball bouncing. I'm watching it, and I'm going to decide where do I want the video to start and where do I want it to stop. I'm going to hit the space bar to play the video, and I'm going to come back here, and let's just say we start here. That's where I want the video to come in or the clip to start, and I'm going to stop the clip there. Now I just want to grab the video again, so I'm going to click on this little icon and drag it down into my timeline, and it just adds it right after, or wherever you drag and let go, that's where it'll add it in your timeline. So if I play through, you can see over here it shows me what's in the timeline on the right hand side screen, and on the left hand side screen it's still showing me my source file. So you're going to go through and do that to all your clips and add them into your timeline in the order that you want in order to create your video. But before I get too far creating my video, I wanted to add in a music track in the background. To do that, it's really easy. You can either go back to your media tab here and find your music file and bring it in that way, or you can just drag and drop a music file into your timeline. So that's the way a lot of times I'll do it. I have different things in iTunes. I'm just going to drag one, bring it over and drop it into my timeline, and then it just adds it into the project for you. It's really easy just to bring in any kind of audio or even video clips. You can just come and drop them in if there's other things you want to add later on. So now that we've added in a few things to our timeline, we want to start to look at our timeline itself. And there's some options on how we can view it to help make editing a little bit easier. So I'm going to close my media pool here, make my windows a little bit bigger. And the first thing that I want to look at in my timeline here is this icon right here. It's called the timeline view options. So I'm going to click on there. And one of the things that we can do is come to video view options. And I like to click on this second guy. It's going to make the video clips a little bit bigger. It's going to allow me to see a little clip of what is in that video clip or that video file, so I kind of know where to go in my timeline once I get a lot of stuff in there. And it also gives me some other options, which we'll talk about in a minute. With my audio, a lot of times when I'm cutting audio, especially when there's talking involved, I want to take out the dead space and everything. I want to know where the waveforms are in my audio. So if you click on this guy right here, it'll show you the waveforms of the audio. So say, for example, this is music, but if I want to cut out quiet section, now I can see where the audio is for that particular audio track. So I select that. You can also adjust the height of your video track or audio track to whatever you like. I usually like to keep mine a little bit bigger so I can see these labels here, audio 1 and video 1. Okay, so that's it for our timeline options. I'm going to turn that off. And then what I like to do once I get going here is actually label my tracks. So for video track 1, I'm going to come in and I'm just going to double click on it, delete it, and I'm going to label it 5D Mark IV. And then on the audio track, I'm going to come down and just label it music. And this way, it just makes it a little bit clearer on what's what, especially once you get multiple tracks going. So I'm going to play through our video here. We'll see how it works with our music. So you can see we have our music right below our video, and that's working out pretty good so far. Another useful thing to know about your timeline is how to get around it, how to move around your timeline. So there's a few different ways you can do it. You have your plus and your minus here, which is your zoom in and zoom out. You can also use Command or Control plus to zoom in and Command or Control minus to zoom out. And that'll help you see different parts of your project. Maybe you want to see the whole thing at once, or you want to zoom to a certain part. You can just zoom in and out and move to wherever you want to go. If you're editing on a laptop, you can also use the trackpad and use 2 fingers to scroll to the right, scroll to the left, and also up and down. Now, I don't have enough tracks to go up and down, but you can scroll like that. So there's a few different ways you can move around your timeline. And of course, you can use the sliders on the sides if you want to do that as well. A few other things to know with your timeline here. If you look in your video track here, this first little one turns your video on and off, and this guy locks your track so that you can't edit it. So you might be able to cut and trim other parts of your project, but it won't affect that particular track. Down in your audio track, you have M, which means mute the track. You have S, which means solo the track. So if I had multiple audio tracks, you would click S and that would play just the track that's soloed. And then you also have a lock that you can lock that track as well. Now we get to talk about some fun stuff in editing our video. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was how to fade in your video. So when you hover over your video clip here, assuming you have your timeline option set to view your clip like this, you're going to see 2 little white icons at the end of your video clip. And that's how you're going to fade it in. So you can just click and drag that little slider there. So you can pick however long you want that fade to be. Let's say I want it to be 1 second. Over here on the left-hand side, I'm going to see our timeline video, and I'm just going to hit the space bar to play the video. And you can see what that fade looks like. So let's make our window a little bit bigger here. I'm going to click on this little window icon, and that's going to get rid of my source file window. So I don't need to see that because I don't care about that anymore. Now I just want a nice big window to edit the video in. So fading in the video is really easy. That's a cool feature that you'll probably use often. And now we want to talk about how do I trim the video. Let's say I like my audio track, so I'm going to actually lock that so I don't change it on accident. And then let's say I want to clip out some parts of my video track. So let's say I want to come to here and I want to trim this video track here. There's a couple ways that you can do it. One way is to select this blade tool and then just come down, and wherever your timeline head is, you click and it's going to split your clip. The way I like to do it is to use Command or Control B. For me, it helps. I don't have to click around as much. I like to use some keyboard shortcuts, and Command B is one that I use all the time. So then let's say I come over here. I want to trim it again, and I want to take this middle part out. And let's say I want to fade this part of the video, and then I'm going to leave this one. So if I wanted to move a file around the timeline, I can easily just select them and drag it wherever I want it to go. Another useful thing to do when you're cutting and trimming your video is to use Ripple Delete. And if you're not sure what Ripple Delete is, I'm going to show you. If I come here, let's say I want to cut out part of this clip here. I'm going to create a cut, Command B. I'm going to come over here, move it down a little bit more, Command Control B. And let's say I wanted to get rid of this part right here. If I just hit delete, it's going to delete it. And now I have a space here. I have a gap. Well, maybe I want all these clips to move down to the left here once I delete that, and that's called a ripple delete. So in order to do a ripple delete, you select the clip you want to get rid of, and on a Mac, you hit Shift, / and delete. And you see it deletes it, and then it scoots everything over to the left and brings it right to the end of the previous clip before it. That's super helpful. I use that all the time when you're trying to cut out little dead spaces in your video and you just want it to move along smoother, and it's a lot quicker than having to click it, delete it, select all your files, drag them over. So Ripple Delete is a super useful feature, and again, it's Shift / delete. So let's say I cut a clip and I took a part out and now I want to add it back, or I think I might want to use it. How can I extend this clip that I have here? Super easy. You just click on the end of your clip and drag it to wherever you want it to be. And as long as there's actual footage there, you can extend the clip as long as you want. Let's say I wanted to overwrite this clip with this one on the left here. I can just click on the end and drag it over top of that file. So a lot of times I like to edit to the beat of the music a little bit, or somehow edit to the music. I think that helps your video look even better and have a better feel to it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick, and then we'll continue learning some more here in DaVinci Resolve. Okay, so I spaced out my video clips how I want them to appear in my video, and now I want to talk about the audio just a little bit. So just like we faded in the video clips, we can do the same for the audio clips. So I'm going to unlock my audio layer here, and let's say I want my clip to end a couple seconds after my video clip ends. I want the audio to end. So a real quick tip here on how to jump ahead like 1 second at a time is if you hold Shift and you press your arrow keys. It'll jump your playhead ahead 1 second each time you click the arrow key. So I'm going to do let's do 3 seconds here. And then I'm going to cut the audio with Command or Control B. In this case, I'm just going to delete the end. And I can fade my audio the same way I faded my video. I can just grab this guy here, drag it in, and set it wherever I want. So let's listen to how that sounds. And let's say I wanted to fade the video with it. So I'll pull that and then I'll pull the video with it and let's see how that looks. All right, so there we go. So you can fade your audio the same way. So let's say I wanted to look at some specifics of a clip. Maybe I wanted to scale it. Maybe I wanted to rotate it or do something with it. How do I see those kind of tools? To do that, you can just click on a clip and we want to come to the top of our window here and click on the inspector. The inspector is going to give you all the information about your video as far as like what kind of mode you want it to do. If you want it to appear on top of another video clip, how does it add almost like layers in Photoshop or something. You have your transform tools, so you can zoom it in, zoom it out. You can rotate it, move it left, move it right, all kinds of different features that you can do here. And if you mess something up, you can just hit the reset button and it puts everything right back to how it was originally. You have different options like cropping, dynamic zoom, stabilization, scaling, lens corrections, a whole bunch of different tools here that you can use to tweak your video if you need to. So let's say maybe you want to have your video zoom in as it goes along. You can either use this dynamic zoom and just turn that on and it'll do it automatically for you. Or if you wanted to set the zoom by yourself, I'm gonna mute our audio track here for now. If you wanted to set the zoom by yourself, you have these little diamond icons over here. Those are keyframes. And if you're not sure what a keyframe is or you're brand new to video editing, a keyframe basically tells, say you wanted to zoom, it tells the zoom when to start, when to stop, and how far to go. In order to be able to set those keyframes and work with it, you want to select your clip and I'm going to click the keyframe button here, and that's going to set keyframes for any adjustment that I make. It'll set it automatically. When you look back at your clip here, now you see this little S-curve looking thing, and then you click on that, it brings you down to where your keyframes are. So let's say I have this video here and I come in to there and then I want it to zoom in. So I'm going to click another keyframe. I'm going to zoom it in and then I want it to be focused on the basketball. So I'm going to move my window up here and then I'm going to let it go forward a little bit. And then as it goes in, let's say I want to add a keyframe and drop and follow the ball down. Actually, I'm going to add the keyframe here for my position. I'm going to move forward a little. I'm going to add another keyframe and I'm going to drop it down and follow the ball. So let's see if that worked there. It zooms in and drops down with the ball. So that's how you would use keyframes, and it just takes playing with it to get used to it and how it works and everything. But that's basically how keyframes work and how you can change things to move dynamically in your video. If you just wanted things to be static and you just wanted to, say, zoom in on your video, you can come back to, this is just another clip here. You can just zoom in and leave it. You don't have to change anything else. It'll just stay there the whole clip. And just like we can see properties for our video clips in the inspector, we can see properties for our audio clips in the inspector. So you click on your audio clip and you're going to have a few different options here that you can use to adjust your audio clip. Although typically I will adjust my audio clip in the Fairlight tab down here. There's a lot more options and things you could do in there. More audio processing to help your audio sound awesome, which I've got some videos on and I'll put a link up around here somewhere. You can check that out later after you finish this video. But a lot of cool things you can do with audio in DaVinci Resolve. So one thing I do like to do with my audio right when I bring it into my timeline is to normalize the audio levels. And to do that, just click on your audio track. I'm going to unmute it here. Click on your audio track, right click, and come up to normalize audio levels. There's different options here, and the one I usually use is True Peak. Normalizing your audio is basically going to set the highest point of your audio track. The volume isn't too loud or too quiet in parts of your track here. So I always normalize the audio and then I'll leave it like that. So let's see our video so far and see how it's looking. Oh, another tip real quick before we get going here to watch the video, to zoom in and out of this screen up here, you can just use your mouse wheel to zoom in and zoom out. If you want to get close to see something, or if you want to see more of your screen here, you can zoom in and out using your mouse wheel. So let's check out this video, see how it's looking. All right, so not too bad for just a little sequence here that we're testing out. So let's say maybe you got some transitions that you want to add into your video clips. You can find all your transitions and effects in your effects library. So if you come along the top left hand of your screen, click effects library, you have all kinds of really cool things in here that you can use. You have video transitions, cross dissolves. There's tons of different things in here that you can try out. And to use them, it's really easy. I'll just show you here real quick. You would just grab one of your transitions here, anything you want. I'm going to use cross dissolve. I'd grab it, drag it down, and you just drop it right in between your videos, and it'll just pop it right in there for you. If you want to adjust your transition, you can click on the end of it, drag it in, drag it out, and that will adjust it for you. And if I just play through it real quick, let's see if it works here. Okay, so yep, that works. And if you want to delete it, you can just click it and hit delete. So you can do that between any clip that you want. And that's how you use transitions and just pop them right into your video. If you want to put text in your video, that's also very easy. It's right here under the same effects library. You click on titles, and then you have a lot of different text options. So these top couple here are just straight text. The little lightning bolt means that the text with the lightning bolt was created in Fusion, or gives you the option to go into Fusion and create different things, adjust different things with that text. So let's just say I want to find something here to use. Let's say lower thirds. I'm just going to pick this one. So I want to add a title. You just click it and drag it down into your timeline and drop it on a video track. Now, in order to edit and add the text, I'm going to come back. I'm going to put my playhead over top of the text. I'm going to click on my text, and then I want to edit it. So I'm going to come over to my inspector, which is going to bring up all the details of that title. So I'm going to come over here, and we're going to call it whatever we want. We're going to say nothing but, let's say nothing but net. Nothing but net. You can adjust your fonts, your type, your sizes, and each one of these has different kinds of things that you can adjust in it. I can adjust the colors, I can adjust pretty much anything, and if I can't adjust it here in the inspector, you can come over here into the Fusion tab and you can make the adjustments over there. So let's just say I want to leave that as it is. Sometimes it takes a moment for the text to render. Let's see how that looks. Nothing but net. So one of the next steps that we're going to get into is color grading our footage. What if we want it to look a certain way? How do we adjust colors or exposure or give it a film look? How do we do that? So there's a lot of different ways to do it. And the way that I'm going to show you here is a way that's new in DaVinci Resolve 16, and that's to use an adjustment layer, and that's to use an adjustment clip. The adjustment clips are really cool. It's basically a layer that you would put on top of your video clips that allows you to make one adjustment that will apply to all your clips instead of having to adjust every single clip individually. So to do that, super easy. First thing I wanted to do was move my title text up because I want this adjustment clip layer to be directly above my video clips. So I'm going to come into my effects library, come down to effects, and we have adjustment clip. Just click it and drag it down onto your timeline. I'm going to rename this track just so it's easy for me to find. I'm going to call this color grade. Click on my clip. I'm going to extend it out for the length of my video clips I want it to affect. Now that I have that there, I can select it, and I'm going to jump over into the color tab where I can make all my adjustments on color, exposure, LUTs, all that kind of stuff. That's where you would do all that in the color tab. So let's jump over to color tab and get going over there. Okay, we're in the color tab and there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of things you can do. I'm just going to show you some of the basics to get started in it, but there's a ton of stuff that you can do in here, and I'm learning new stuff every time I use it. Different tools, different features, and how to make different adjustments. So I'm going to just show you quickly here how to use it. So the way color grading works is with nodes. A node is basically like a layer. I'm more familiar with Photoshop, and I came from photography before I got into video editing in this program. So I'm familiar with layers. So a node is basically like a layer. There's different kinds of nodes, different ways they go together. But for now, I'm just going to talk about basics with the nodes. So on a node, you can make any number of adjustments. One thing that I like to do is kind of use one node per adjustment in case I want to change anything later on. So the way this tab's laid out is we have our video here from our timeline. Right below that, we have our individual clips. Below that, we have all of our adjustments that we can make on each node. And when you click on these, it gives you a different set of tools that you can use in that node to make your adjustments. And then over here on the right-hand side, you've got different options. You can see different scopes and waveforms and parades and different information and keyframes. That's where you would see all that kind of information over here. And then at the top, we have our node tree, they call it. So here we have one node where we can get started making changes. A lot of times I like to leave one node with nothing on it. So to make a new node, you can either right click and do add a node and add a serial node, which is just another node right in line with the one before it. And there's all different kinds here, but we're going to just stick with serial node for now. Maybe I want to label that so I know what it is. I'm going to say label node and I'm going to say white balance. And if I want to set the white balance on my picture here, I can find something that looks kind of white. Let's say that's white. And I'm doing all these adjustments on my adjustment clip. What that's going to do is just apply everything that I do on this one adjustment clip to all my video clips, because in the timeline, the adjustment clip was above all my video clips. Prior to DaVinci Resolve 16 beta here, you used to have to go through and every single clip you had to make your changes. You could copy them from one to the other, which was pretty easy, but it still took time to do it. So it's nice that now I can use one adjustment clip. It'll apply to all my video files that I have in my timeline. And I just think that's a lot easier and quicker. So I'm in my timeline here, and let's say I want to adjust the white balance. So if I come to this color wheels tab right here, click on that. This little eyedropper down here is my white balance. I'm going to come up, click on that guy. Zoom out, see how that looks? All right, we're gonna play through the video a little bit. Okay, I think that looks all right. Now let's say I wanna set white points and black points for my video clip. I'm gonna come down here and actually turn my clips off, see if I can zoom in, make this a little bit bigger here so we've got a little more screen to view. And I actually wanna create a new node to adjust my white points and black points. To do that, a keyboard shortcut is Option S. And that's gonna add a new serial node for me. I'm gonna come in and label it. Now I can adjust my white and black points. So if I come to my color wheel, and in here we have different tabs. We have, this is the primary wheels. You've got your bars, another way to look at it. And in this view, you have your shadows, midtones, highlights, and offset there. So we're gonna come back to the first tab here. To set my white points, you can click on this little guy, find something that's white. Let's say right there. Okay, and then if I wanna set my black points, I'm gonna click on the little icon next to lift. And let's click on something that's black. So it added more contrast. It actually pushed the colors a little bit to a different direction, but I'm okay with that. I'm just gonna leave that how it is right now. So let's say I wanna turn a node off so I can see what it looks like without that node. If you hold Shift and click on the number, it'll turn that node off. And if you want to turn all your changes off, all your adjustments, and see your original video file, come up here and click on this little circle with the stars icon, and that's gonna turn everything off and show you the original clip. The other tools that are helpful are the curves right here. You can make curves adjustments if you wanna add more contrast, or maybe let's say you wanna brighten it up a little bit, it's a little dark, or you wanna see that tree over there, you can make your adjustments here. You can also select whatever color you want, the red, green, or blue channels, and make those adjustments. Make your own color curve here, your own color grade for your video. And there's a lot of different things you can do here with your tone curves, just like you would in photography or using any other kind of photo editing software. So curves is really powerful. And then as you click through these different little tabs here, there's different things that you can adjust in your images, whether it's the different hues, the saturations, the luminance of different colors, and it's all a lot of different stuff. So for example, if I click on the green here, hue versus saturation, it'll put a point where that color is, where I clicked in the grass there, and I can drop it down. I can raise it up, and it's a really great way to make specific adjustments to your images. And this is just all stuff you'd have to play with, figure out how to use it, what works good for you and works good for your video that you're working on. The next little eyedropper tool here comes in handy. This is the Qualifier. So this will select only certain parts of your images, whatever you click on basically. So if I clicked on the asphalt, it's gonna select the colors that are only that asphalt. And you can see the little preview here in the window of my node. It's only got certain things selected. The next icon that I use often here is the window icon. And what this does is creates a window on your screen. They call them power windows. And you can create adjustments within the window or on the outside of the window. You can adjust your feathering of the window. Let's say I wanted the ball to be super dark for some reason. Set my window to the ball. I can come over here to my curves and drop it down, make it real dark. Not that I'd want to do that, but that's kind of how it works. So you have all different shapes. You can use your pen tool, draw your own shape. A lot of different ways that you can adjust your image. You can also have it so that this will track with the ball as it bounces or track different things. That's a little more involved. I'm not going to get into that right now, but you have the ability to do that. Moving on to the next tab. Here is a good feature that I use pretty often, and it's the stabilizer. And I want to stabilize my clips so that they're not as shaky. In order to do that, I can show my clips. I'll click on the clip I want to use, and all you have to do is come to this little target looking tab here. You click on this area and you select stabilizer. And then it's as easy as hitting stabilize. It'll analyze your video, and then it's going to stabilize it the best that it can. So let's look at that. A little smoother. Now let's play it without the stabilization. There's without. Let's try this clip here. Now sometimes it zooms in a little too much, and we might not want that, but let's try and just see how it looks this time. And sometimes you get funky little jumps in the footage there. So one thing you can try is changing some of these settings down here to see if it affects anything. Let's say I'm going to say this option, similarity, instead of perspective. I'm going to click it again. It's going to run it again, and then I'm going to see how that looks. So it still looks a little bit jumpy, but you get the idea. Some clips it works better than others, and sometimes you have to stabilize part of it, but not all of it. So you kind of get the idea. You just play with it and see what works best for your video clip. So let's say I want to add a LUT that's going to color the whole video for me to a certain color, whatever the LUT is that I picked. So I want to come back to my adjustment clip, and I'm going to actually, let's delete this node here because I don't want to use that one. So I'm going to say delete node. I'm going to add a new one using Option S, and I'm going to put the LUT on here. Let's label this as LUT. So to find your LUTs, come over to the top left-hand part of your screen and click on LUTs. And there's some preset ones in here, and you can download ones, I'm sure. But let's say I want to put a LUT on here. I want to use this one. So all you have to do is drag it, click it, drag it over into your nodes, and drop it on the node that you want to use. I'm going to close my clips here and make this a little bit bigger. So if we turn it on and off, we can see the difference there. Adds a little more contrast, makes it a little more green. So let's play through that, see how that looks. So let's say I think that LUT is a little too strong. It's a little too much. So you can back that off by selecting your node. And if you come over to this guy right here, it looks like a picture with a little person on it. You click on that. And if you come to key output, and there's a gain here. So if you boost it up, that's going to add more. And if you drop it down, it's actually going to lower the amount of the LUT, almost like an opacity, lower the amount of the LUT that's applied to your video clip. If I turn it on and off now, you can see a little bit of a difference, but not as much as if it was at, let's just boost it way up. So now if I turn it on and off, now the difference is fairly noticeable. But let's say I drop it down, maybe it's a little much. So you can drop that down and adjust the opacity or the amount of your LUT if you want. So that's kind of a real quick overview of the color tab here and how you use it. There's a lot here. It would take a long time to go through it all. I don't even know it all. There's tons here, a lot of great stuff, but that's the basics of how you get started color grading your footage here in DaVinci Resolve. Next, we'll make a quick pit stop in the audio tab before heading to our delivery tab to show how we render out our project. All right, here's the Fairlight Audio tab, and there's a ton of stuff that you can do in here. There's a lot of awesome things that you can do that you can improve the quality of your audio, especially when you've got talking and vocals. So I'm not going to run through too much here. I've already got videos on that stuff, and you can check those out, how to EQ and different things you can add to improve the audio quality of your video. But the basics are you got your audio tracks. You can adjust your volume with your faders here. If you scroll down here, there's different options, your EQs, your dynamics, different kind of things you can adjust. You can create buses, all different kinds of mixes. It's really cool. There's a ton here. Check out some of my other videos, and maybe in the future I'll do another one that gets a little more into the Fairlight tab here. So next, let's jump on over into the Deliver tab. So I've got my video all set. I want to export it out and deliver it. So looking at the window here on the left-hand side, you have presets at the top where you can just one-click preset and export your video. You've got custom settings here if you want to set your own settings. In the middle here, you have your video, your clips, your timeline, and this little gray bar here shows you your inputs and outpoints of what will be rendered. And over here on the right-hand side, you have job queue. Once you set your settings, you add it to the job queue, and then you can render it out. So in this case, let's say we're making this video for YouTube, but you can also just use the preset they have right here in Resolve. So I've set up a preset for myself for my YouTube videos, and let's say I want to put this on YouTube. I'm going to click on my custom settings. All I have to do is add in a name here. I'm going to call it sample video. Select a file path of where you want it to go. Just a couple options here that I usually use. This should be set to what your timeline is. It should do that automatically. A lot of these I don't touch. One thing you can double check is under advanced settings. You have an option here that says use optimized media. You want to make sure that that is not checked. So that way, when it renders out your video, it's going to use the full res footage that you have. It's not going to use the optimized media that we created in the beginning that helps speed up our editing. Once all your settings look good to you, or if you use one of these others, that's fine too. You click add to render queue. You'll see it'll pop the job up over here. And now this is always going to stay within your project. So you can always go back. You can make multiple different ways of rendering out your video. You can have a lot of different things here and select and render which one you want at any time you want. So I've got my job here. The next step is just to click render, and it's going to go ahead and render it out, and our video will be complete. Okay, our video is complete, and let's see how it looks. I'm going to hit play. All right, guys, so there you go. That's getting started in DaVinci Resolve. Hope this helps you out. Get going in Resolve. It's an awesome program. And the more you're in it, the more you'll figure things out. And really, I enjoy using it, and I think you will too. So if you have any questions, leave a comment below, and I'll answer it as best I can. And if you're into photography, Photoshop, Lightroom, and even a little bit of video and video editing, including DaVinci Resolve, consider subscribing to my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.